Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football with the news of Jeff Lebby heading over to Mississippi State. The Oklahoma Sooners will now be opening up a job search for the new offensive coordinator in Norman. And a couple things that come to my mind. One, this has to be one of the most attractive jobs across the country. You take a look at what this Oklahoma offense is going to look like just from a personnel standpoint heading into next year. Jackson Arnold, one of the most talented quarterbacks across the entire country, a ton of young weapons on the offensive side. You know you're going to have a good Oklahoma offensive line. You look at where Oklahoma is going with this offensive coordinator hire, you got to think they'll have the pick of their litter. And this is the most attractive offensive coordinator job. I think that presents itself across the country. Really excited to see the direction Oklahoma will go with this one. I got a few names that I think would be really good hires for Oklahoma. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Excited to dive into it. Before we do, just want to say thank you to you guys in it. A special shout out to the Oklahoma fans. I cannot tell you guys how much your support has meant to the boys. This is a program that I love talking about going back to the summer months. Huge fan of what Brent Venables is doing in Norman, especially as they move into the SEC. But the amount of support you guys show, all the Poomer Sooners in the comment section, it really does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, this is a program we're going to be talking a lot about in the next couple of weeks, right? Not only are you bringing in a new offensive coordinator, but Brent Venables is going to get aggressive in the transfer portal. Once again, really successful transfer portal haul going back to last year, bringing in guys like Rondell Bothroyd and Andrell Anthony, true game changers for Oklahoma on both sides of the football. Brent Venables, when this portal opens up on December 4th, is going to get aggressive again. I'm going to be doing my best to cover all the roster moves for the Sooners. So appreciate you guys rocking with us. Without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with first, what do you want this Oklahoma offense to look like? And I think this is a really important question to start with because Jeff Lebby did a phenomenal job scoring points at Oklahoma, right? 34 or 43.2 points per game. That was number 2 in the country, 6.6 yards per play. That was number 10. This Oklahoma offense put up points. That wasn't really a question. Now, the reason I asked this question is Brent Venables is a defensive-minded head coach, right? He wants to control the time of possession. He wants to play solid defense. And there was a little bit of clash between how Jeff Lebby wants to run the offense and what Brent Venables wants this team to look like. And having a semblance of a run game and having the ability to control the time possession and put your defense in good spots to win football games is a really important conversation. I think it's kind of short-minded to just look at the offensive stats and say, we just want to score the most points out of the entire country. Now, yes, the goal is to score points on the offensive side of the football. Nobody wants the Iowa Hawkeyes offense in Norman. But I would look at a team like Michigan, which plays with a kind of a slower tempo, really efficient, stays on the field, controls the time possession. Yeah, they're top 20 in the country in points per game, but it also allows their defense to be top 5 in points per game allowed because they're controlling the time possession and kind of controlling the game. And I would be surprised if Brent Venables, or I wouldn't be surprised, I should say, if Brent Venables wants to go in that direction. Say, yes, Jeff Lebby, it's awesome that you were averaging 43.2 points per game. That was number 2 in the country, but we were also 83rd in time possession. And that defense was playing a lot of football, and it's hard to put up elite numbers on the defensive side of the ball when you're running opposite of an offense that plays with the tempo and speed that Jeff Lebby and this Oklahoma offense did. So the reason I asked this, you could go out and get a hire that's going to put up a lot of points and play with a lot of tempo like a Lane Kiffin or Jeff Lebby or that kind of tree of coaching staff. Or you can go get an offensive coordinator that wants to run the football, wants to control the time possession. That's probably my first conversation that I think Oklahoma should have is, what do we want this offense to look like? Yes, you want to score points, but at what cost do you want to score points? Getting into the candidates that I think are going to be on Oklahoma's radar. And you got to start in-house with a guy like Seth Latrell. And this is probably where the most buzz is as of right now. And there's a lot of reasons, and I have Matt Wells here too. There's a lot of reason a guy like Seth Latrell or Matt Wells makes sense. You're doing an in-house hire. The offense took massive steps in the right direction. You get to keep a lot of that terminology and a lot of that schematics that Jeff Lebby had. Because at the end of the day, this Oklahoma offense was extremely good, and it made a ton of improvements. And I can completely see the lens of you want to continue that kind of success heading into next year. And also from a commitment standpoint, you have a ton of young talent. You have a ton of young talent coming in the 2024 class. Guys like Michael Hawkins or Kevin Sperry. You have Jackson Arnold already in there. You want to keep those guys around. Maybe hiring in-house would make a lot of sense. And a guy like Seth Latrell, although did not work out at North Texas as a head coach, has been a phenomenal offensive coordinator at all his stops. And going to Matt Wells, a very similar conversation. I mean, I thought he was a pretty solid coach at Texas Tech before they decided to move on. At the end of the day, these guys have been good offensive coordinators. It makes a lot of sense to stay in-house where you don't have to change all the terminology and all the schematics of this offense, and you can kind of continue where you left off. So these two guys make a lot of sense. If you were going to go out of house and make a hire that's not currently with the Oklahoma Sooners, the first guy I am picking up and calling is Shawn Lewis. Shawn Lewis left his head coaching job at Kent State to go to Colorado. And I am a massive fan of Shawn Lewis. And quite frankly, Coach Prime, I think, mishandled him in a massive way. You take a look at what Shawn Lewis was doing with this Colorado offense. It was top 30 in most offensive metrics at Colorado. And he was working with like kind of a not a very good offensive line, and they were still putting up points. And you have Coach Prime, who takes away his offensive play calling duties because he feels that he wasn't running the offense the right way, which in my mind was absolutely crazy at the time. Shawn Lewis probably wanting out of Colorado, and I think he's one of the brighter, young, offensive-minded head coaches in the country. You go back to his time at Kent State in 2020 as the head coach at Kent State, a program that is so hard to win at in terms of the talent that you can acquire. He scored 49.8 points per game in that 2020 year. That was number one in the country, and it wasn't even close. And Shawn Lewis is, in my mind, one of the best young coordinators out there, and he's probably looking to leave Colorado after what Coach Prime did to him, taking away his offensive play calling duties. Shawn Lewis would make a lot of sense for Oklahoma to go after. The next guy I want to go and talk about, and I've seen a little bit of buzz around him, and there's not many, and this is, again, a younger offensive coordinator that I think is really moving up the ranks really quick, and that's Brenan Maran. He's currently the offensive coordinator at UNLV, and you look at what he's done in his short stint at UNLV. This is his first year as the offensive coordinator. This is a team that did not even won 2 games in 2021, won 5 games in 2022, are now sitting at 9-3 and playing for a Mountain West Conference title at UNLV. He's 36 years old. He's one of the most charismatic and young up-and-coming offensive minds in the game. Not only are they top 20 in scoring offense at UNLV, you look at his track record of player development, specifically at the wide receiver position. In 2022, he was at Texas. We know how good those Texas wide receivers are. In 2021, he was at Pitt, developed a guy like Jordan Addison. You look at that Pitt offense in 2021 with guys like Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison, one of the more prolific offenses that you saw in the ACC. The ACC champions, Brenan Maran, although young, and that's probably the negative, is that he's 36 years old, and this is a big jump going from UNLV's offensive coordinator to the Oklahoma Sooners offensive coordinator. A little bit risky, but man, not only is there recruiting, you look at guys like Emmett Jones and Brenan Maran recruiting for Oklahoma, I think you're going to see a massive, massive skyrocket on the recruiting trail, but he's a guy that has a proven track record of developing talent. And at UNLV, he's been a phenomenal play caller at UNLV. I think Brenan Maran would be a really interesting hire, a little bit more of a high risk, high reward, but I think Brenan Maran would make a lot of sense. The last guy I want to talk about, and if you guys have listened to me for a while, there's not a bigger fan than of Coach Andy Koenig than myself. You look at this Kansas offense, and the talent is just nowhere near most of these other teams in the Big 12. And he just schemes up points year after year after year. You look at the improvement that that Kansas has had under Coach Lance Leipold. A large part of it has been on the offensive side of the ball, and a large part of it has been Coach Koenig running an offense that is just extremely efficient. And going back to what we want this Oklahoma offense to look like, he's a guy that doesn't run with tempo. He likes to run the football. They're running the football 60% of the time at Kansas, and he does a great job at doing so. He's going to be working with a better quarterback, a much better quarterback in Jackson Arnold than he was with Jason Bean. He's going to be working with a better offensive line, running backs that are just as talented as what Kansas has. You look at what Coach Nikki could do at Oklahoma with the upgrade that he's going to have in talent. I think this makes a lot of sense. And going back to what do you want this offense to look like? It's going to be a little bit of a slower pace. It's going to be running the football. The time of possession for the Sooners is going to go way up with a guy like Coach Nikki. This one would make a lot of sense. And he's been, there's not many more proven offensive minds than Coach Nikki, not only at his time at Kansas, but his time at Buffalo. He's had success everywhere he's gone. For me, looking at what Coach Nikki, that name throws me for a whirlwind. There's not many more proven coaches than Coach Nikki at maximizing the talent around him. And you take a look at what he could do with all the talent that's at Oklahoma. I think Coach Nikki would be a phenomenal hire. So couple of different ways you could go. I'm kind of interested to hear what you guys have to say. It makes a lot of sense to hire in-house. A guy like Seth Latrell, a guy like Matt Wells, but there are a lot of young up-and-coming coaches that will be available. And going back to how attractive this job is. Not only is it one of the biggest brands in college football, the Oklahoma Sooners, but it's a place where you have a ton of talent to work with, and you're going to have a ton of talent to work with immediately. Really excited to see where Oklahoma goes from here. We'll be following it. We'll be covering it. Appreciate the Oklahoma fans rocking with the boys again. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, let me know in the comment section who you guys would like to see running the offense in Norman. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.